The price of lithium-ion cells, just like this one, have been plummeting for years. In fact, prices have fallen over 90% since early commercialization. But the next big price drop isn't coming from new chemistries or exotic materials. It's coming from changing how batteries are built. Engineers have known the secret to making batteries cheaper, faster, and in smaller factories for years. But many thought the new method was simply impossible to scale. But they finally started to crack it. It's called dry electrode coating, and Tesla has recently started using it for cells put into production vehicles. So, how does it work? And why weren't engineers able to scale it up until now? As always, I respect your time, so let's get straight into the engineering. I'm Ryan Inis, and this is a Zeroth Deep Dive. To understand why this all matters, we need to look at how batteries are made today. Inside every lithium-ion cell is a tightly wound roll of layers, electrode materials, separators, and metal current collectors. Getting those electrode materials to stay on the current collectors is one of the most difficult and expensive steps in the battery manufacturing process. The traditional method starts by making a mixture a bit like a glaze for a donut. You mix the electrode powder with a liquid to form a thick slurry, and pour it onto the current collectors. To solidify this electrode glaze, you then have to slowly bake it dry in a long line of industrial ovens. As a process, it works, but it's slow, expensive, and extremely energy intensive during that drying process. Dry electrode coating, however, throws out the liquid entirely, meaning no slurry, no ovens, and no waiting. And that changes the economics of battery manufacturing in a big way. It's an elegant solution that enables the anode and cathode materials to be put directly onto the current collectors without using a liquid and saving time and money. Industry estimates put the cost savings as high as 25% due to faster production times and energy savings. There is a challenge though. Dry electrode powders don't stick to the current collectors as easily. This is where one of the big innovations is used, and it allows the electrode powders to stick to the current collectors. Instead of using a liquid and a dissolvable binder material to stick everything together, the dry process uses a special polymer, usually PTFE, which you might know better as Teflon, and physically stretches it into tiny fibers. I read a patent from the company Maxwell Technologies, which was later acquired by Tesla, and it sums up this process really elegantly. They take the dry electrode powder and the PTFE binder and blast it through a jet mill, where high pressure air causes the particles to collide with the surface at high speed. The shearing force from these collisions causes the binder to stretch out into a web of fibers, a bit like pulling a piece of chewing gum until it goes all stringy. And these fibers wrap around and bind the active electrode particles together, creating a self-supporting, dry film without a single drop of liquid involved. Fraunhofer, a German research institute, are also working on dry electrodes, but they do something slightly different. Instead of using a jet mill to stretch out the particles and make fibers, they use two rollers spinning at different speeds. In both cases, the resulting dry film is then pressed onto the current collectors, where the pressure and heat cause it to bond and become more dense. And because there's no liquid to make things slippery and spread everywhere, the film stays put and sticks, rather than squishing outwards like a wet slurry would. All of this means no ovens, no solvents, and no waiting around. From my research, it seemed like a lot of these issues had been solved for quite a long time now. I mean, that Maxwell Technologies patent was filed in 2008. So why is it only now that Tesla is really scaling this up, with some of these cells going into production vehicles? And what does this all mean for the actual performance of the cell? But first, a quick ad break that includes some interesting engineering that solves a fundamental flaw with conventional portable AC units while staying easy to install by just one person. If you're tired of loud, inefficient portable AC units, this My Dear Porter split is for you. A standard portable AC unit has a fundamental design flaw because it pushes the hot air out through a hose, which creates negative pressure in your room, which pulls in all of the outside warm air to compensate through every gap and crack. The Porta Split fixes this by instead operating like a wall-mounted split AC. According to my dear's data, this unit has 6 times the cooling capacity and 4 times the cooling efficiency of traditional portable AC units. It's won multiple design awards, including the Time Best Innovations Award, and I can see why. You get the performance of a permanent split AC unit, but without the restrictions or the need for an expensive professional installation. In the silent mode, it's only 39 decibels, and I've had it running for hours without even noticing because it's actually below the ambient noise of my flat. For reference, that's quieter than a library. There's also a dynamic deflector that throws air upwards and across the space rather than at your ankles. It's A++ efficiency rated for cooling and A+ for heating, and combined with the AI energy saving mode, it keeps the running costs super low throughout the summer. And it's 4 machines in one, providing cooling, a heat pump, dehumidification, and ventilation, so it earns its place year-round, not just in the heat waves. Their app is also super useful because it lets you set the temperature before you get home and track your energy consumption. There's also their Air Magic Plus air purification mode, which helps to reduce bacteria and viruses in the air. If you're looking for a super efficient and portable heating and cooling system, make sure to check out the My Dear system in the description down below. But now back to how Tesla cracked dry electrode manufacturing and what that means for cell performance. Okay, so from my research, the big thing that's really stopped the scaling of dry electrode manufacturing has been that cathodes have been particularly tricky. A battery's anode is made from much softer and less reactive materials, but applying the dry process to cathodes has often led to unwanted side reactions and even damage to the production equipment. My guess is that Tesla and their competitors have been holding out until they understood the process for cathodes too, and that's exactly what happened in the last few years. A lot of the unwanted side reactions in the cathode that had previously prevented the technology from scaling up seem to be due to it reacting with the binder material, which you'll remember is PTFE, which is turned into those sticky fibers that hold everything together after being exposed to a shear force. So the binder that had been cleverly engineered to hold the electrodes together without the need for any liquids were now the cause of a new problem. They were unstable with the cathode's electrode material. Engineers couldn't just remove the binders, otherwise everything would just fall apart and they'd be back to square one. The big revelation from Tesla was to change the single binding material into a mixture of materials. Blending the PTFE fibers with more chemically stable polymers like PVDF creates a barrier between the fibers and the cathode particles, blocking the chemical reactions that was destroying performance. Fraunhofer seem to be battling similar challenges, but I can't tell from their current research how far along they are with solving it. They do, however, say that they've partnered with a leading European vehicle manufacturer, and my guess is that that would be Volkswagen because they already have a subsidiary PowerCo that have shown interest in dry electrodes for years now. This is all unbelievably exciting to me because it's one of those battery breakthroughs that we've been hearing about for a decade now, and it's finally come to fruition and is going into production vehicles. And for once, China isn't the country pioneering it. In fact, the relatively smaller amount of investment into wet electrode manufacturing pipelines in USA and Europe might actually give a competitive advantage when transitioning to dry electrodes, though I wouldn't rely on the rest of the world staying behind for very long. What makes this all even better is that not only does the dry electrode manufacturing reduce cell costs and removes the slow drying processes, the batteries it makes can also be even better than the ones made using wet coating processes. One big reason for this is something called binder migration. When a wet slurry is dried in an oven, the evaporating solvent carries the binder towards the surface of the electrode, taking binder away from the bottom of the electrode layer. This creates weak spots near the current collector, which limit how thick you can make the electrode, and ultimately caps the energy density you can achieve, because thicker cathodes store more energy. With the dry electrode process, there's none of that binder migration, so there's enough throughout it that it stays strong and you can have much thicker cathodes, and therefore more energy dense batteries. It also helps with solid state batteries, because the solid electrolytes used in them are generally sensitive to moisture, meaning wet processes can actively degrade the very materials you're trying to use. Dry processing sidesteps that all entirely. And I think this is a really cool part of dry coating for batteries, is that not only does it improve our current batteries, it's also a prerequisite for some of the future batteries that we're working towards. If dry electrode coating doesn't get you excited about the future of battery technologies, I honestly don't know what will. Battery cells are getting cheaper, better, and less reliant on foreign supply chains, and it's all happening right now. There's still a long way to go until dry electrodes are commonplace in every battery cell, but I think that we've passed the inflection point, and that is where we're eventually heading. My guess is that as things scale up, there'll be more quality issues and it will require tweaking and changing the formulas and machines, but we're well and truly on our way. In a news cycle full of battery breakthroughs that never seem to come to fruition, or seemingly impossible claims that cannot be verified, this is a really refreshing story about what's happening right now in the real world. If you want even more information on this, check out the fantastic write-up by Jordan Giesige from The Limiting Factor, which I've linked down in the description. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps the channel a lot. You might also like some of my other videos, like this one on how we tested a 1000 brake horsepower axial flux motor. And, as always, thanks for watching.